Yeah, but we shouldn't hold out on the action. Let's get underway as we hop into Sunday. It begins here with MarineLorD versus Leenock. Now, this is a clash I've seen too often. These guys were scrimming hardcore with each other at the beginning of Wololo, at the beginning of Golden League as well. And I gotta say, Leenock always felt like he was trailing, but I love the fact that he's still always chasing that #1 spot.
Yeah, exactly. He's one of the more consistent pro players, but someone that has some ups and downs. So if you take a look at his N4C performance, he played really well over there. Golden League, also decent performance, but the point is that he never really had that breakthrough performance, like that top 2 or even that grand finals victory, and that is something that still awaits him. I'm actually curious to see whether he can step his game up for the Heidelberg LAN and potentially surprise some people, because you get the feel that right now he's not really considered one of the frontrunners to win the Heidelberg LAN, but he definitely has the skill set to accomplish that.
Sure, we have to remember this is a guy that got second at the biggest LAN so far, right? M4C. But it was a very one-sided grand finals. The weird part is how he stomped MarineLorD in that semis, right? It was 4-1 in favor of Leenock, so absolute shellacking there. But that was the last time I can actually remember looking and going, wow, Leenock really handled MarineLorD. And that was, of course, back in March. So still a lot to make up for, considering that was half a year ago. And I'm sure Leenock is going to keep striving for that position. But feels like the recent metas haven't really played into his playstyle. I was really hoping to see this most recent meta enable him, just because I think there's a lot more focus on micro, and that's something that Leenock has in bundles.
Yeah, that's the big thing, that the recent meta became much more micro-focused, partly with the inclusion of custom maps. If you think about the maps like Kawasan or even Holy Island, for example, with the English Man-at-Arms micro, the game, thanks to the custom maps, became much more reliant on micro, and that is something that Leenock has a special skill in, and something that he is definitely among the best players.
Absolutely. You got the nickname Leenock for a reason. It's not just because you like seafood. So, open this up. 220 bounty already for Leenock. It looks like he should be able to lock in maybe 275, close to 300. Someone I'm looking at is ball location. It is prime for an early aggressive playoff of Leenock. Curious to see if he wants to go this way. It's interesting, actually, because MarineLorD, the guy on the other side, when he plays Roos here, he doesn't tend to go for these ball plays. He's actually recently been going for free TC builds as the Roos.
Yeah, and there are some juicy TC spots for MarineLorD if you think about that. On the left side of his base, there are 2 berry patches close to a forest, could be a prime spot. Or on the right side, the 2 deer patches are rather close to one another. So, a lot of reasonable spots for him to place his TC at, and it wouldn't be very exposed to aggression.
Actually, I quite like that deer location on the high ground just for the vision gain and the play in towards it. But at the same time, he's more likely to go for the northern deer just because it's safe, retracted, up against a wall where you can't be harassed. And the cool thing about getting those type of spawns as a Roost player, it allows you to go full aggressive instead of defensive because you don't have to worry about horseman raids from the Abbasids.
Yeah, indeed. Now, when it comes to the boar spots, there is a much more aggressively postured boar for Leenock if he wants to go aggro. That boar in between the 2 players is the perfect place to build a forward base at. But he could also go for a much more convenient spot on the north. That is mostly the boar expansion with a second TC and just play a little bit more defensive style gameplay. But you have the impression that he kind of needs to play a little aggressive over here, because we have seen this numerous times. You let the Abbasids do their thing in Feudal Age, they will steamroll you by minute 20.
Yeah, I think the best thing for Leenock, and someone that should enable his playstyle, is to go for an aggressively postured base into multi-pronged assaults with knights. The whole logic being here is if you look at the generation from MarineLorD, his food is fairly stretched out to the east and the west, so he should end up with kind of a wide free TC boom, which should offer up multiple avenues for Leenock to assault him, considering how open the western side of this map is.
Yeah, that's a good point indeed. You could definitely target one of those TCs. I think it's a matter of decision for Leenock, and we are soon going to see whether he wants to go very aggressive, or whether this is just going to be a 2 TC build, maybe even a 3 TC build. We have seen Roost players starting to experiment with that.
Yeah, I am wondering if he's going to come back around to it. There's going to be the pull. It's 10 villages, so this is going to be a TC drop, likely on the boar. Okay, no, he recalibrated. That was a misclick then. Usually when someone brings 10 villages, it's definitely a TC. When it's 8, it's probably just a boar play without TC. But considering he just bought the stone, I think we are going to get treated to the 2 TC build here.
Yeah, but surprisingly, the second TC is gonna be all the way in the middle of the playing field, so he won't go for the safe option to the north. In fact, he's gonna go with a very aggressive TC spot here. Interesting decision, I'm not necessarily against it. But it kind of implies that he needs to be pretty aggressive here because this is a more than exposed town center spot for him.
Oh yeah, I expected this to be a TC placement in the center. It just makes a lot of sense when you look at the surrounding resources. The logic here is that you can bridge towards the D on the right side, and you can afterwards move towards the northern bore as well, right, from this TC. So there's a lot of gains around it. The other cool thing is this position he's chosen blocks out one of the berry patches that MarineLorD will eventually want because, of course, the Abbasis get such great gathering rates off of berries.
Yeah, that's a good spot indeed. It's also going to secure a relic for the future, and it's a pretty good forward expansion. Now, I wonder if Leenock is going to spot that, and the answer is that he will. In fact, that's actually MarineLorD we're talking about. MarineLorD spots the second TC instantly, so he knows what's up, but he won't have a chance to delay this.
Yeah, it's not really likely you're ever going to intercept. Only Horseman coming out now for MarineLorD. And the interesting part is he did go for that stable quite early, so forgo the rush into the TC himself. Quite unfortunate for him now because there's not really anything he can do to stop this going up.
Yeah, indeed. MarineLorD actually decided to go with the first Horseman out there, so he felt endangered. Whoopsie. Well, he was in danger.
He's not in danger anymore, though, Lidakor. He's safe. You know, they can't hurt him anymore.
Well, he was in danger. He no longer is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You know, like you can't be in danger if you're dead, right? It's past tense. Well, MarineLorD will be playing from the past now in terms of TC build-up. This feels annoying because you should always be beating the Roost player to it, but this is the power of the Roost. When they set their mind to it with the Golden Gate and good bounty at the beginning of the game, they can easily surge forward and get that TC online first.
Yeah, that's a very fast TC timing compared to MarineLorD's one. Keep in mind, MarineLorD went for the stable first, so he delayed his own town center timing a tiny bit, but this is a nice little edge for Leenock. He's gonna build up a villager lead of about 4, 5, 6-ish. And it remains to be seen what his reaction will be if MarineLorD wants to go for 2 additional TCs. Looks like he might actually go pretty aggressive over here off the back of that boar.
Interesting opening from Leenock. Most players these days are actually going into knights, even when they see horsemen for the Abbasids, but instead he doesn't hesitate to drop the racks in the archery range. Now, long term, this actually has a better purpose because it allows you to bulk up faster, right? When you go for knights, you're getting fewer, and you're looking for these raised, these chip damages. With this kind of opening from Leenock, it seems like he wants to try and close this game out very quickly.
It makes a lot of sense. We don't want to let the Abbasids boom, and Leenock knows that fully well. Now, this will be spotted once again by MarineLorD, so he knows what's up. Sees the ranges. He's gonna have to start adding his own horsemen, possibly even archers, though, because spearmen are already making an appearance.
I'd love to see him just try and div it into camel archers early on, but I think it's difficult with your economy at this stage. You probably have to stop off at normally archers to begin with, which is somewhat feasible with the savings on food, but you aren't getting the influx when it comes to wood that the Roost get.
I think the concern with the camel archers is the time it takes to build them. But
Yes.
he knows fully well that Leenock is gonna go for a timing push here. You can't wait for camel archers to mass, especially against mass archers, because they will just be picked off by the food archers of Leenock quite fast, and it takes too much time for you to build up those numbers.
No, I agree. It's one of those situations where you wish you could get camel archers, but it's due to the production times. It's more to do with the fact you can't build enough production buildings to get there, right? That's always been the issue for them. In fact, that's always been an issue with a lot of early aggressive matchups. Why you see civs like the HRE choose to tech up instead of build up their feudal is simply because when you have all this increased resource gain, like it's very difficult to find a justifiable way of spreading your production lines quick enough. That's why we see Abbasids always go for multi-TC builds, because it's efficient, booms you up quickly, and then you can come back for the production rates later.
Speaking of efficient though, and speaking of spreading out, MarineLorD goes to the third TC. Right now doesn't seem very fazed by this assault on his base, if you can call it an assault. It's more like a harassment right now by Leenock. But MarineLorD needs to respect this, because he's far from starting to build up his numbers, and Leenock's numbers are increasing rather rapidly, actually.
Yeah, I think Leenock, he knows what he needs to do. You can already see the Rams being prepped with the siege engineering coming through. This TC is very exposed, not just to Rams, but also to torch damage, because it's not connected into the main base, which means it doesn't have that +5 fire armor. So these TC expansions from MarineLorD could die very quickly if he doesn't get forces to defend them.
And the danger is that part of his food eco could collapse if he loses this TC expansion, and should he lose this one, there is a likely chance that he's going to lose the one to the right side as well. And, well, Leenock feels confident about this ram push. He's going to just delay the range defense and go for siege engineering first, so he knows that he needs to push this very soon. He already has the wood for a ram.
Actually like that he goes in for forestry. I think this is a little bit underrated. It's very cheap and it makes sense for a civ like the Roost, especially when you consider that you're going to need a lot of wood with your composition between rams, archers, and spearmen. does get more expensive in the wood department than this.
Looks like it is mass archers for the time being by MarineLorD. He's trying to build up his numbers. I actually wonder whether Leenock is going to target the stable here. He might just ignore the TC and go for the production buildings.
Oh, this is interesting from Leenock, actually. More than just like where he should target, it's the composition he's targeting. He's switched into knights now, and this is going to catch MarineLorD off guard. He's heavily invested now into archers and stables. It's going to be very difficult to transition back to racks, and even if he does, he's going to be waiting on those tech ups to come through as well.
Look at that. He's going to target the house. That's going to make MarineLorD house for the time being. And he's going to follow up by taking down the only stable that MarineLorD has.
Now archers from MarineLorD at least pick off a few reinforcements coming in, but the rams are still unaddressed and the archer range is being set up on the backside. This is going to make the knights even better for Leenock. Now he's even switching into just prepping horsemen instead. Issue for MarineLorD at this rate is the lack of food, right? Like this secondary TC that's now blocked from being used is where the deer are. So as long as Leenock postures here and goes after this TC, MarineLorD could run out of food in a situation where he needs mass influx to afford the horsemen.
And MarineLorD was housed for so long here. That single house being destroyed is slowing down his escalation quite a bit. He's going to lose the stable, and now the town center is going to be the next target. Actually, stable not getting taken down by the ram over here. You could save it if you're MarineLorD.
Nah, he doesn't want to bring villagers over. He knows it's gone. It is chalked. His best hope is to just mass archers, and now he gets the bad news when the knight shows up. So he realizes he's now been heavily discounted. He's going to need to transition into racks. In the meantime, villagers not able to do any damage to these rams. These rams that could easily take down the TC with the amount of troops nearby. Archers trading out. More troops on the way from Leenock. Horsemen a little bit AFK in the brain at the moment, as the archers are going to be forced to retreat from MarineLorD. And the rams are going to be exposed to the TC as well as the villagers coming out. But that TC not long for this world, especially now the spearmen are joining in on the burn down.
Yeah, that's the big thing. That TC almost dead, and MarineLorD doesn't seem to have the forces to stop this. MarineLorD actually pulling the villagers here for the repairs. He's going to have numerous casualties here under the TC as he's trying to save this one. Might actually end up saving the TC, though.
It's tough right now. Although the numbers look like they're with MarineLorD, consider this. One side has a blacksmith's upgrade, the other doesn't. In fact, one side has 2 blacksmith's upgrades. There's a lot of difference between each of these archers' independent damage.
The bigger thing is the idle time for MarineLorD. He had to commit so much to hold this one. He lost villagers, he had to idle so many. And in the end, Leenock did lose 2 battering rams, but he has no trouble building new ones. And at the end of the day, the impact on the eco was much larger on MarineLorD's side. Keep in mind, behind this one, Leenock does have a safe 2 TC boom that's completely untouched.
Leenock now moving up towards the other board, of course, to inflate his food rates consistently. That should allow him to afford the knights in the coming minutes. MarineLorD yet to get the answer to this, finally setting up those racks, but that's more burden for him. The thing that he's doing here as well that's more important is he's linking the TC into his main base, so he can't just be burnt down by torches. It has to be rams to take out these TCs.
And also the additional buildings for the Golden Age, that's a big thing for him as well. He needs to connect those buildings, those lumber camps, the mill on the right side. Those are going to be very valuable in the future.
And I'm wondering if MarineLorD is going to try to be a little bit greedy here, because there is going to be a temptation in his mind long-term to try and tech up. I think you have to just keep doing feudal until you beat Leenock, though. You can see now the roofs are fully invested. It's very unlikely that Leenock goes back for a Castle Age.
I think the biggest thing we learned from Recon set yesterday was that whoever blinks first could easily lose the game. You try to go to Castle soon, you could easily get yourself overrun. In fact, especially with the Abbasids, this is a big bait. You spend a ton of resources on your Castle Age, it's going to take a lot of time for you to get there. And even if you do, you will still be exposed to this assault. So right now, I feel like it's very risky for MarineLorD to go up, especially because it's not like he's a terrific eco lead even to just have spare resources to burn.
I mean, I think if we learned anything from that game yesterday is that the Abbasids late game is a snooze fest, but the Roost actually might be the secret answer to that absurd Civ. We'll have to see if it goes that late, though. I think these players aren't going to be aiming for Imperial timings. Nice raid in. I wondered if it would be spot in the end. MarineLorD sussed it out, though. Wondered where Leenock was getting his food, so we'll idle the ecos as well as killing a few off. Not enough here to defend.
And Leenock has spread out his food eco quite well. He's on the board, he's on multiple berry patches, he's also taking the hunts. The problem here for MarineLorD is that as much as he was killing Leenock's eco, he himself was losing a couple of villagers. Boar? Oh no. Leenock, no!
Oops. Bro, you need to get sticks out. Right, pointy sticks is the way. And, oh god, the timing.
Oh, that's so sad. Well,
at least
speaking of
he's going
timing
in.
though,
Yeah, but look at that Archer army now. It's so thick for MarineLorD, and MarineLorD also got the Blacksmith now, so this will be an easy defense. Trade out. Rams at least doing the business, but you know Leenock has to back away from this. You've got stretched too thin. And this is the issue. This is the ridiculousness of the Bastards, the power of their economy. 3 TCs, yet only the cost of 1.5 means less food spent on increasing your economy than what Leenock is spending.
Archer numbers looking better here for MarineLorD. First, Knights making an appearance, those Spearmen lagging behind for the time being, but numbers still looking better for MarineLorD, 47 to 42, and this is a fight that he can take.
I mean, this is chalked at this point. Like, Leenock went for this very early timing, and it's failing, and now he's trying to transition into Knights. The issue with transitioning into Knights is the same with what we discussed earlier about transitioning into Camel Archers. It takes too long. Very long production time, 35 seconds to push each of these out. And you know that in the time you push those out, MarineLorD could have 3-4 more horsemen in the battlefield. It's very difficult right now. And the other issue I see is with these upgrades coming through, MarineLorD's Death Pool of Archers actually kills these Knights quick enough.
Well, so far the Knights have been doing a decent job absorbing some of the damage output. Problem is that Leenock's Archer numbers also dropped quite massively here. And for Leenock, he needs to win battles over here. TIE is insufficient, and right now this is an even trade at best.
Yeah, you say these Knights have done a decent job. The only thing they've done a decent job of doing really is dying, right? Like two flurries of arrows and they're dead. That's it. It feels really underwhelming. And the thing is, between these Russian and Knights, like 2 coming at a time, there's a trade out of Archers. And the numbers just keep increasing. While Leenock adds 2 or 3 Archers, at the same time, MarineLorD is adding 4 or 5.
But this is because Leenock is actually not committing to this entirely. He wants to go into Castle Age. This is dangerous. In fact, I'm actually wondering whether this aggression is just a decoy to shield him from going to Castle Age. It's risky though.
I think if you go Castle Age here, you lose full map control. That's the problem, because what will happen is MarineLorD will double down on the proxy base. There's a lot of infrastructure here. He can build rams instantly as the Bastards. It's very dangerous what Leenock is doing. I think the reason he's doing this is because he realized he couldn't win feudal anymore. When he saw that Archer Ball, this was a choice of, I can't fight now.
Yeah, that's the big thing. But this could work out well for him, because keep in mind, MarineLorD, he doesn't want to blink first. He wants to stay in Feudal Age, and one thing he doesn't know is how much Leenock is going to bring on here in Feudal. MarineLorD doesn't have a single scout alive, so it doesn't know whether Leenock is once again massing forces or whether he's going castle.
I think he knows. Like, he's not being pushed anymore. If there's no reason that the Roost player would not push you other than he must be teching up. And MarineLorD just an inch away from getting full confirmation, but I think he knows. Now that he's gone in and an army isn't fighting him, this should be obvious. Rams are being prepped as well, so a lot of this infrastructure is going to be dropped. Leenock is then at risk of losing the proxy base entirely alongside his TC, and thus losing over half of his production.
And that's the big thing. You lose the production, you will lose your Castle Age power spike, because you simply can't pop out those Castle Age units, or you can't get the Castle Age upgrades. That's the big problem here. This is the risk of a proxy base. You lose control over the central part of the map for a moment. You could easily lose all your production buildings, and you would just have nothing backing that up.
Yeah, the tough part for Leenock is he didn't want to throw away the army to cover the tech up because of this proxy base. He felt he could defend it. Seems like he was wrong on that one though, because MarineLorD just got encouraged to build even more archers to try and hold this aggression in the feudal age for even longer. Remember, the Bastard eco is strong, so they can still tech up. They're going to be doing so from a position of power. They're going to be taking out this proxy base. They've still got a huge standing army of 70, and Leenock probably won't have the answer to that for another 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, he needs those upgrades in a matter of seconds. Castle Age Knights are in, they will be detached for raids, but the army is just insufficient here for Leenock. 30 archers against 52. Maybe with veterancy he could take a decent fight, but even that could be insufficient. Those raids could be the ones that buy him some time.
The problem is I doubt it's going to buy him enough time on its own. He needs to do this 2 or 3 times over. Remember that where we've seen the Bastards be weak is when they're spread wide and you start to raid them. So step 1 here is correct from Leenock, but he needs to follow this up with 2 or 3 more raids consistently to try and keep MarineLorD on the defensive.
Yeah, he's gonna have to switch into men-at-arms here. The problem with that is that MarineLorD knows fully well that it is gonna be a men-at-arms play, so he's gonna be prepping crossbows, and in the long run, that is the better unit to work with. So MarineLorD is more than happy with the switch that Leenock is making, and best thing that Leenock can hope for is that he holds off this force, and then he can find some angles to raid from.
And this is the problem for Lee, right? What has he actually gained out of this tech up? He lost an entire base. He got 1 relic, has a second one coming back, but MarineLorD's going to be teched up. And also MarineLorD, because this offset timing is in the middle of a farm transition, he won't be that weak at this point either, especially considering the spears are already there to react to the raid in from the Knights.
Only hardened Spearman, but numbers should be sufficient to push this away. And look at that. Hard switch into Spearman, actually. This is somewhat risky for MarineLorD, but right now he has the eco to just overrun his opponent with men-at-arms, so he could just win based on sheer numbers, so that's probably the game plan here.
Yeah, I mean, spears are actually decent against men-at-arms if they're bastard spears. The logic being that double the amount are attacking straight away, right? So that the damage exchange is fairly even. Long term, if you spread out the entire line, sure, men-at-arms win, but do you know how long it takes to spread out an entire line of men-at-arms? Let's say you've got 40 on each side. There's a reason why this unit looks pretty underwhelming a lot of the time, and it's because men-at-arms can't really move fast enough to choose a fight or spread out to get maximum impact in the fight. They're just a tank.
Speaking of spreading out, though, raid on the left side by the Knights from Leenock pushes in on the right side with the archers, doing quite a lot of eco damage here when it comes to idle time.
Yeah, you can see him marching in mass right now, Spearman looking to overwhelm, and archers are trading out, but the issue is how easy it is for MarineLorD to replace this in his own base. All of a sudden, Leenock realizes he got baited in a bit too deep. That's going to be a throwaway of pretty much the entire archery battalion. Nice pinch on the north side, able to move in with some heavily armored units. Will idle eco up there. But MarineLorD right now looking comfortable to hold still, especially with the transition now coming into crossbows.
Yeah, indeed. He's still at 77 army, and he still has 110 villagers. That's the big thing. Even if he loses a couple, it's not a big deal, because he can just replace them with army at this pace. The fights that Leenock are taking are decent, it's just the fact that he's just so far behind here, partly because his eco is still sitting at 88, despite the fact that it has been like that for quite a while.
And Leenock needed this breach to work because he was looking for a keep drop. He's hoarding a lot of stone right now, but I don't see any way he's going to get to use it. It's just, you haven't got a strong enough army to breach. Yep. Right now, you feel heavily discounted, and it's going to get worse and worse as this game goes on. This is the Bastards at a phase where you'd think you'd be able to hold them. And what's coming up next is going to be that Golden Age 3. Once that's online, the production speed of this Civ is going to be absurd in this matchup.
Now, MarineLorD is short on food. That could be a weakness for him. He's floating tons of wood here, but his farm transition a little pedestrian, and he's trying to go for very food-heavy units, knights, crossbowmen, and his food income is not great by any means.
It's not just him, it's Leenock as well. They're both suffering from the same thing. I was about to say, MarineLorD is doing more or less what Leenock always does, where he realizes he doesn't have enough for resource, doubles down to get it, and then fixes the issue, but it leaves big gaps. Funnily enough, in this matchup, because it is Leenock is up against doing the same thing, MarineLorD is not going to be as crippled as he should be from this overbearing issue with his economy. Now, those keeps, I don't think they're going to be good enough on their own. I think this map is still very much too open, unless Leenock wants to try and wall the outskirts. But the problem is, like, how do you do this quick enough? And how do you do it in a way that stops your opponent from coming through? The only way the Rus can do it where they can stop their opponent from coming through, i.e. stone walls, is if they get up to Imperial Age, build that Sky Tower.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay, back we are.
Did that thing happen again? I had a feeling. I was like,
no. My mic just decided to die for a moment, so...
Oh, that's good.
All right, back we are. You need a big mango shot here if you're Leenock. Like, he's gonna try sneaking a Castle up. That might even be completed. The problem is that he's just being outnumbered so heavily.
Mango shot sounds like someone I'd do at after party, but in this situation, he needs to kind of give Leenock a little bit of a hangover. This could be spooky, because the only person building the mangoes right now is, of course, MarineLorD. Leenock looks like he's choosing to prep the spring rolls instead, but limited time, and MarineLorD straight away goes after the Siege Workshop. Will not allow the counter to come out. That's going to force a fight that MarineLorD wants Leenock to take, because he knows he can't right now.
For the time being, Siege Workshop stays alive, but look at the farms, KP. That's the bigger issue, actually. All the farming transition that Leenock has been working for, it's gonna be gone. It's all denied, it's all idle, so his food eco is just once again gonna be a train wreck. Oh, he even had to cancel the keep.
Oh, it gets worse and worse. And remember, this was the wood line for Leenock. Look at his wood now. He built a Siege Workshop, he can't afford things out of it. He needs more farms, he can't afford those either. Like, this could be the beginning of the Snowball, because he's going to have huge gaps in his military force in the next 2 minutes. You can already see it appearing. 67 military to the 25.
Yeah, look at the population, though. It's less than 100 for Leenock. Pop cap for MarineLorD. Like, MarineLorD at this point can start contemplating going into Imperial, and Leenock has nowhere left to go. If Leenock knew the population gap, I think he would GG out immediately.
That's what I'm about to say. You just call it here. Like, you can feel it's pretty much over anyway. Even if you can't see the pop cap, you know that you're about to lose half your base. And the issue for Leenock in this matchup is, where's your point of recovery? We've seen the Roost can be amazing in, like, hyper late game Imperial, but I don't think more than 4 players know how to play that optimally right now on Lipping against Leap Assets, because nobody's doing it right now.
Yeah, and look at the Monastery and even the Abbey, right at the edge of Leenock's base. He's reliant very heavily on those 4 relics he has banked, given how low his villager count is. He could easily lose all 4 of those relics to MarineLorD, and then his eco is just gonna be completely trashed. In fact, MarineLorD, he is not gonna mess around, he's going into Imperial.
Yeah, he can go into Imperial and keep pushing, remember. By the time he arrives at Imperial, there's going to be no gaps in his military push or his economy because of how the Abbas is balanced that way. You know, a lot of people looked at the Abbas not being able to speed their tech up as a downside. Realistically, it's kind of an upside because unless your opponent goes to your base and sees that extra wing being built, by the time they get confirmation you're aged up, you aren't going to be weak economically. You're going to have a big reserve to spend at the beginning of the age up.
And MarineLorD does have those reserves. Leenock, not so much. He's doing his best right now trying to snipe those Rams with the Springbolts, but it feels like a long shot for him right now, struggling with population. And I think at latest when he sees MarineLorD reaching Imperial, he's gonna tap out of this one.
Back here now. Woof. Rams are still up, by the way. Rams have not been addressed. Springbolt will at least take out the Mango. The Rams actually might get the Abbey of Trinity, though. It's going to be tight. I think it's actually on fire right now. It looks like the archers are going to be more or less cleaned up.
No.
Damage is just done here. Like, so much damage done right now. Abbey of Trinity is on fire. Your villager line's been exposed north side by a few horsemen. Tech up is underway. And as it stands, Leenock is down at a paltry 69 villages. A nice number, but not nice up against the 144.
Yeah, he's been bleeding villagers the whole game. And it kind of felt like he was just too focused on these fights, and he didn't even realize many of his proxy bases or just expansion places being raided by those horsemen. He just dropped by 20, 30 villagers over the course of the last 5 or so minutes thanks to those horsemen.
Yeah, I think Leenock's issue is he kind of got sucked into the whirlpool, couldn't find a clear target early on, and then he realized long-term he couldn't keep up the Abbasid eco. I think a transition he could have made, he started building knights, but he committed them to the main fight instead of finding where the food was still being gathered. That would have been the game changer because MarineLorD wasn't prepped for the first few nights. He had to transition later. Had you moved those knights onto the economy and shut down any scalability from the Abbasids, there is a way that Leenock could have ended this game by 20, 22 minutes. But MarineLorD, despite the pressure on the deer, he still found food in the end.
It's also the escalation. By the time those raids started, MarineLorD was up to 120 villagers, so he could easily afford to lose 10, 15 villagers because he still had the potential to replenish it. MarineLorD reaches Imperial. Leenock
that's it.
Tapping out.
He knows when it's over, won't wait around. Game 1 going to MarineLorD here, as expected in the Abbasid Roost matchup. It's interesting as well, considering the Roost in the hyper late game do have a slight edge over the Abbasids on this very map, but wasn't able to get there. And you mentioned that the MarineLorD's eco is big. I was talking much earlier. I was talking when he only was setting up the 3rd TC. What Leenock done really well, if you notice that point in the game, is he intercepted the deer stack TC.